And good morning, everyone. The brave are here. Not only the subject matter, but the time at which this is occurring in South America and North America. So it's a little bit easier, perhaps, in the other parts of the world here in Europe and in Australia, New Zealand. So just want to say welcome to Annette and Catherine and Frederick. Leslie, okay, U.S., Mariut, and Martha, and Natnia, and Nessa, and Tia, and Zenaidi. And here on the other side of staff, we have Michael and Tuya giving us a hand. So let's just have, we're going on, with some interesting material about certain great triangles which rule different stages of development for the aspirant and the disciple, and in general within the body of our local cosmic logos. Well, actually, it's a super cosmic logos. It's the one we're calling the one about whom naught may be said. And in my view, it's that little triangle, and that gives you a sense of the proportion of things. Probably every arm of the galaxy, depending on the shape of the galaxy, has its own distinction and ray coloration. In any case, in the Tibetan's books here, we're never really getting beyond, I think, this particular being, and he's put in green because it's such a powerful third ray connected with it, and there's a connection there with the Pleiades, maybe as the totality of the head center of this great being, the thousand-petaled lotus. So, it looks big, but relatively it's a very small matter within our local area of the cosmos, and certainly within cosmos as a whole. We'll just have a little alignment, I think, here, kind of coming together. People will be joining us as we go along, and there'll be the sense that wherever we are geographically, the field of consciousness is coming together out of the consciousness of the participants, so we're all connected. And we're seeking the more macrocosmic picture here. Both are necessary to study. Excuse me. The microcosmic area is where we do our practical work with triangles, and we'll be having that broadcast tonight at 5 p.m. GMT. But it's important to see the larger context in which this planetary work within humanity is occurring, and that's the purpose of our ongoing study of the science of triangles, the great organizing principle within the etheric field of space, and practically speaking, the way of bringing through the soul potencies into our planet, and thereby, as DK might say, esoterically bisecting the square. He said his teacher taught him how to do that, and I'm pretty sure that was Pythagoras teaching DK when he was assisting Pythagoras in those old days in Asia Minor in Crotona, the original Crotona. So let's see what we can learn and together, and how we can expand our view of the larger triangles and their network, and how they feed our solar system and our planetary triangles, and eventually, of course, reach right into our own etheric body, which must be eventually organized in triangles that allow a free flow of energy among them. So this is where we left off last time. Basically, he was saying that the 12 arms of the crosses will the 3 crosses make together 12 arms, and it is the energy flowing through the 12 arms and their place in the soul horoscope excuse me, which will assume major importance. So we do hope that when the astrological material begins to be expanded around the year 2025, that something of this will come through, so we'll know how perhaps to set up these charts. Meanwhile, it's all speculation, but something of value can be gained. He says, this I will enlarge upon when we take up the theme of the 3 crosses. The 12 houses, about which there is so much contention, wondering what is the proper house system. Probably quite a number of them can be used successfully, depending on the astrologer. The 12 houses concern the personality. Okay. The 4 arms of the 3 crosses concern the soul, and it is these 12, and their appearance in the horoscope, or their failure to appear, which will govern the horoscope of the soul. I mean, always there are going to be there's going to be these signs in the horoscope. So from the sign angle on the crosses, there is completeness, but not all of the different signs may be tenanted. In other words, they won't have necessarily a planet in them, and so are judged to be perhaps less effective in the horoscope than those which do have the planets. All of that has to be clarified, and you can study your own horoscope in that respect. We'll get into it. The idea of the crosses and the evolution of the human being is very, very important. The mutable, the fixed, and the cardinal crosses. And I would say that that people like ourselves are either in the process of leaving the mutable cross, oftentimes via the sign Pisces, and joining the fixed cross of wisdom as we enter the kingdom of the soul and take the first initiation, or we are on the fixed cross, which will lead through the third initiation, almost up to the fourth, and then beyond the fourth, there will be a cardinal cross, which will last for a long time. Okay, so their appearance, or their failure to appear, will govern the horoscope of the soul. All the 4 influences of the 3 crosses will be found in the chart of a master, and probably whether or not there are planets in each arm for such a being, and therefore an indication of which constellations are primarily related to the unfoldment of consciousness and to the evolution of spiritual understanding is of significant use here. And that's what he's going to take up in the section that we are focusing on today. Let's just repeat that, an indication of which constellations, and I think they are, well, they are the great constellations, and also the zodiacal constellations are primarily related to the unfoldment of consciousness and to the evolution of spiritual understanding. So now we're into our work for today, or at least our reading for today. We cannot expect that we will absorb all of this. It's just too much. But, as we begin to pay closer attention, the understanding will definitely grow, and we have to have that faith that the understanding will grow. So we'll study, each of the constellations of the zodiac. We always have to study from a number of angles, because the function of any sign of the zodiac, or representing the constellations, let's just say that the energy really begins with the constellations and is carried forward and reduced and transformed into usability by the signs. So there's different combinations all the time. And let's just, if we talk in terms of signs, the different signs will mean different things depending upon the groupings in which they are found. So now there's a major cosmic triangle, and you probably know right off the bat what it is, because it's been repeated quite a number of times. It is the Great Bear, Sirius, and the Pleiades. Now, sometimes it is, you may wonder, is Sirius really a constellation, or is it a star? There are hidden factors to Sirius, and some of them are invisible, and others are more visible, like something we call Sirius B. This is something that Tuya is always emphasizing about the Egyptian method of initiation. Both Sirius and Sirius B are strongly involved in the Egyptian method, and probably in all methods around the fourth and the fifth initiations. So is it a constellation really? Well, it's not a large one, but it is oftentimes considered to be a blind for the little bear. The little bear and Sirius have a very close connection, and there's one point in the book where he takes this major cosmic triangle that we're just now discussing, Great Bear, Sirius, and Pleiades, and instead he substitutes Great Bear, Little Bear, and Pleiades. Pleiades is the third term, if I misspoke there. Okay, so that's the major cosmic triangle. He's not using the little bear here, but we can think of it in that way. The major cosmic triangle works primarily through 6 constellations at this time, and therein is indicated what we might call the law of mutability. Now, everything is in mutation and intelligent change until all the combinations and permutations that are necessary in any system and between various systems are worked out. So when he throws in a sentence like, at this time, just be forewarned that it, what you're looking at right now doesn't necessarily mean forever. It is the configuration as it now exists. Okay, at this time, and again, at this time, he emphasizes, the cosmic constellation, that's the big one, either Great Bear, Sirius, or the Pleiades. The cosmic constellation and the 2 zodiacal energies focus through a particular planet. It may change later, using it as a transmitting agency to the Earth. Now, you know, way back on page 50, if you've been reading this book, is the setup that he's now going to discuss more fully, with Sirius working through the zodiacal constellations of Cancer and Capricorn, and using Saturn as its focus. And some creative hierarchies or groups of monads are involved in bringing all this to Earth. And it looks like this fifth creative hierarchy, which is on the verge of liberation into the cosmic astral plane, is what is engaged when we have this particular couple of triangles. We have, you know, at least two triangles here and more. Then the Great Bear, it's kind of interesting the order in which he puts them, and maybe we'll be able to figure out why, because I don't think he discusses them quite in that order here. Let me just check this. No, he doesn't. He switches the position of the Pleiades and the Great Bear, and this for an obvious reason that will become very clear in a minute. So here the Great Bear is working through Aries and Libra, and it's veiling Vulcan. Now, you know, the Great Bear has a lot to do with Uranus as well, because Uranus is prominent in Aries and Libra, so there's going to be a triangle there, not only Aries Libra Sun and Aries Libra Vulcan, but Aries Libra Uranus. And the second creative hierarchy is involved, and let's see if I can somehow show that. Here it is, and okay, and it's the 11th. Here it is, and it's called the Unknown, and it has a kind of title, you know, Unity Through Effort. The other creative hierarchy we looked at was Cancer reflected down in Capricorn among the manifesting creative hierarchies, and Cancer is always associated with mass life. Now let's see if we have the third one. Is Gemini Sagittarius, the Pleiades working through Gemini and Sagittarius. Mercury is the contributing planet, and it's the fourth creative hierarchy. I'm wondering how he's counting that. We'll have to see. It's called the ninth, or the unknown. Maybe here, desire for duality, something of that nature, and the ray coming through. It's a complex study, but suffice it to say, we are all monads, and we have groupings of monads together, billions of them, and they are all evolving together. And as these groups of monads evolve together, they are known for the level at which they are presently manifesting. Now, way down here, that grouping, let's see if I can get back here, the grouping that we call, no, let's see if I can, there it is. The human grouping of monads is way down here on the Buddhic plane. Well, the Buddhic plane is still a great object of our aspiration, but compared to the residence, the vibratory residence, if I can call it, of the higher creative hierarchies, it's not that high. So we still have the possibility of reaching it, even in this life and increasingly beyond, until at the fourth initiation, we are really focusing in the area where the human monads, maybe 60 billion of them in our solar system, the area where they are intended to work. So, Master DK, he's said to be an expert in this area of astrology, rheology, and the study of the creative hierarchies. He's given us here a little bit, and the important thing to know is we do not walk alone. We're always with our groupings of monads according to the various rays, and these groupings of monads change their position in terms of what's called hierarchies. Now, right now, our grouping of monads is constituting what's called the human hierarchy, the initiates and the lords of sacrifice. But so many, maybe 85% or so, are going to be moving on into what we might call the fifth creative hierarchy, a very sacrificial hierarchy, which is training solar angels, or constitutes the monads who are being trained as solar angels on Sirius. So we keep moving, we keep moving, we keep moving, and the veils are constantly lifting until we discover ourselves to be ever greater beings than we thought we were originally, until we discover that in fact there's only one being in cosmos, and all of the different emanations and the relationships of triangles and squares and stars and all that stuff, that basically they are very temporary and are given to us for the sake of understanding relationship, and they help to work out the particular archetypal design that is in the mind of the greatest hierarch within the universe, the universal logos. He's still the tiniest little thing compared to, what lies beyond, but still we learn how to play a part in that working out. I'm afraid that was a bit of a diversion, but okay. Now, so I've just gone over what they were, and here's the picture. A new picture. It begins with Sirius, working through Cancer, Capricorn, and then through the sacred planet of karma, Saturn, a third-ray planet, and third-ray monadically too. Then come the Pleiades, a cluster of stars, not just the seven, though the seven are maybe the most important, working through Gemini, Sagittarius, and finally Mercury, a third-ray monad, I suspect, but a fourth-ray soul. So, these triangles, you might say the Pleiades, Gemini, Sagittarius, that is a triangle. And then going a bit further and more towards manifestation, Gemini, Sagittarius, Mercury is another triangle. Anyway, the ancientness of Mercury, far older, we are told, than Venus, and related even more to the previous solar system, is indicated in this combination. And then comes, why does he put the Great Bear last? Well, you can probably imagine that it has something to do with the status of those who are receiving energies from the Great Bear. So this thing is progressive. The younger disciples are working through Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn. The middle disciples through Gemini, Sag, and Mercury, and then really on the path of initiation, Aries, Libra, and the Sun, veiling Vulcan, but at the same time much connected with Uranus. So great triangles of a super zodiac, so to speak, a super zodiac of 10 are working through the lesser zodiac. And that's just the way it is here. I mean, you know, you go down to the level of a human avatar, and the Christ will work through a Master Jesus. The Buddha will work through a disciple called Gautama. A Jesus will work through an Apollonius of Tyana. So always there are lesser and greater, and in order to preserve the law of economy, you know, it's not too convenient, as DK says, for some nice child to be born and grow up and say, I'm the Christ, you know. So a Maya Virupa is used, or the form of a willing and capable disciple, which is already prepared, probably, you know, a master really, as in the case of the Christ and Jesus, the master, now the Master Jesus. So everything is subject to the law of economy, and there's not going to be a waste of many, many years in terms of this reappearance of the Christ by watching the Christ grow up from childhood into real usefulness. It won't be that way. Anyway, these are the 6 constellations we're looking at. They have a lot to do with the expansion of consciousness. Now, we'll try to figure out why that may be so. You know, just when you kind of look at these, you know, all kinds of relationships emerge. I don't want to get too tedious about it, but Cancer distributes the 3rd ray. Capricorn, for disciples, distributes the 3rd ray. And Saturn is the major 3rd ray planet. Well, you know, it's obvious you've got a pretty strong 3rd ray coming through there. But we thought, you know, that maybe Sirius was the cosmic Christ on the 2nd ray, which it is, except that Sirius, in its soul nature, is the home of Manas, brilliant Manas, towards which those masters who are lords of compassion and have not yet fully developed their Manas, they go there to develop more Manas. So the whole idea of mind is very much found in this particular triangle. When you look at the next one, the Pleiades is so interesting because they have, in a way, all 3 rays operating, and, you know, including a very strong 2nd ray. Maybe their monadic ray is the 3rd, you know, something of that nature. But they really are connected with cosmic Buddhi and with the solar angels. And here we have more of the soft line rays indicated. I mean, look up here at Cancer 3-7, Capricorn 1-3-7, Saturn 1 and 3, very hardline rays. But here, you know, Gemini ray 2, Mercury ray 4, and, you know, some ray 3, of course, and Sagittarius 4, 5, yes, and 6 are found. So more of the soft line rays are coming in here, and maybe the 2nd aspect of the Pleiades is involved here. You never know when you're looking at a triangle which one of the rays is taking the prominent place under the law of mutation. I mean, someone knows, DK knows, and, you know, certain of the masters know, but we don't know. So there's a lot of ray 2 coming through that 2nd group. And then, you know, ray 1 with the Great Bear, because the Great Bear is the what the rayologist Stephen Pugh calls the cosmic Manu. And that makes a lot of sense because the 7 interior head centers of the one about whom naught may be said, our one about whom, are supplied by the 7 major stars of the Great Bear. And then, you know, working here through 1st ray, 7th ray Aries, 3rd ray Libra, and Vulcan, a major 1st ray planet, with some fourth ray and second ray in the higher areas of its life. So, when you look at a picture like this, the triangles are evident, and we have to learn what each one of them does. Like I say, here is the path of initiation, here is the path of discipleship, and here is more an earlier phase of discipleship, which we might call the probationary path. And that would make a lot of sense, too, because when you look at Sirius, it has a very scorching, burning away of impurities, a type of reaction upon the human being. So, there's such a wealth of knowledge inside a diagram like this. These 6 influences, 6 constellations in this case, represented by 6 signs, aid greatly in the development of self-consciousness, and later of the spiritual consciousness in the man who has succeeded in reaching the point of reorientation upon the great wheel. Now, when does that take place? There's a different kind of speculation of when we start to reverse the wheel. And I would say, that when we make the transition from the high-flying personality, which has crashed and burned in the 5th petal of the egoic lotus, we're ready toward the end of the opening of the 5th petal to be on the path of aspiration, and finally to take the first initiation. And so I think that 5th petal is a major point of reorientation. Now, you look at Sirius, it's going to be involved in so much more than just self-consciousness. Self-consciousness belongs to Leo, but don't forget, when we get into the month of Leo, we have the great Sirius festival. And the idea of I am that, I am that I am, what self are we conscious of? So Sirius is involved in that whole process of making us more conscious of our higher and higher selves. Anyway, these influences aid greatly in the development of self-consciousness and later of the spiritual consciousness, because each one of them has different areas to which it can be applied. It's not like they're riveted there at one area and one area only. And so this spiritual consciousness, do we have it? Do we have to have consciousness within the spiritual triad in order to say we have real spiritual consciousness? If you're very technical about the word spiritual, it takes you into the spiritual triad, and the word divine takes you into the monadic and logoic planes. So we do have to develop finally, as we move towards the 4th initiation, the true spiritual consciousness. And but it all begins earlier when we reverse the wheel and the different flows of energy within our etheric body reverse their direction. Now he says, I deal not here with the personality influences, inclinations, and determinations as they appear in the chart of the ordinary man. Now, the ordinary man and the disciple initiate can have even the same chart, but you're going to read it differently. And different types of triangles will appear. And not only that, but the triangle itself will take on a new meaning, representing a soul or spirit in the chart of the more advanced individual. So he's not dealing with I'm sorry about this thing coming in from the side. I have to learn how to shut off those pop-ups, whatever they are there. Okay, so not the chart of the ordinary man. I deal with the influences, and with those determining energies which pour upon the man who is on the path of return. That this whole book about esoteric astrology is not written for personalities. It is written for those who are on the path of return, and those who really practice the science of triangles will be on the path of return. And a return to the center of his life, even to the monad, and therefore with the final 3 stages on the path of evolution, and I just call them, aspiration, or let's just call it probationary, and then true discipleship, which is also accepted, and then the path of initiation. Okay, so a little more here. Let's see what the kind of thing that he says when he deals with these 3 major triangles which condition consciousness. And we may be able to do a little here. I don't know how much. I don't know that we'll get through all of it. It goes pretty deep, but let's see. Let's start with Sirius, Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn. Okay. So now he's not even so much talking about Sirius per se. He is starting it by calling it the Cancer, Capricorn, Saturn triangle. But they're all an expression of the Sirian energy. Interesting. Okay. And they enable the aspirant to tread the path of purification or probation. Aspiration, probation, there's a lot of testing going on under Saturn. Now, eventually, you climb that mountain and you overcome Saturn in that respect. Just because you overcome one of the areas of influence of a planet doesn't mean you've overcome them all. So, Saturn is active on so many different levels, and the whole cosmic physical plane is really ruled by Saturn. So there's much Saturn testing going on under Saturn, and Sirius is said to be an influence which makes the mundane holy. Sirius is a great purifier, and it provides the method by which we can approach the initiations of the threshold. And actually what DK said is that really only in the chart of a 3rd degree initiate does the placement of the star Sirius really begin to have its most authentic effect. So as I said before, there are just many different levels at which we can interpret the influence of a particular stellar being like Sirius. Yes, it's active upon the path of purification, but it's also extremely active as we establish our own true identity and as we establish within ourselves the Christ consciousness. So, it has higher meanings. It's like Venus. It has, I think, Sirius has a 5th ray soul. But if we look beyond that, the hints and the statements are such that it's obvious that Sirius also has a 6th ray monad, resolving eventually into one of the 3 types of monad, and it will be the 2nd ray, and that's what will give Sirius the name of our local cosmic Christ, the local cosmic Christ. Okay, so anyway, they are expressions of the Sirian energy, and so are Scorpio and Mars as far as that goes. These great influences like Sirius, they send an emissary into our solar system very rarely, and the Sun experiences Solar Logos experiences an initiation, and many are the different uprisings, we might say, of the different planets. And, some of them are quite unexpected. Who would think that there could be an effective triangle called Sirius, Scorpio, Mars? And yet there is, and you can see the battles against impurities in the system could be handled by such a triangle. So these energies focus and qualify the energy of the great lodge of the Most High in that distant sun. Now, the Most High is an interesting term. Sometimes it means Sanat Kumara. Sometimes it could mean even our planetary logos, who's a bit, responsible for the emanation of Sanat Kumara. The Most High could mean our solar logos, but in this particular case, the Most High is the logos of Sirius. Okay. So, these energies focus and qualify the energy of the great lodge of the Most High, of which our spiritual hierarchy, we're familiar with the idea by now, is a reflection. There's a great lodge on Sirius consisting of 3 great orders of lives. And somehow our little planetary hierarchy, which is very powerful as far as we ordinary human beings are concerned, our little hierarchy is a reflection of the Lodge of the Most High, sometimes called the Blue Lodge, sometimes called the Great White Lodge, even as our own lodge is called. But, keep in mind the proportion. Okay, so these energies, the Great Lodge, they qualify the energy of the Great Lodge of the Most High. And, really, if we keep going, it's going to be found to be a generic title, the Most High, because eventually in our local system, whatever the one about whom naught may be said really is going to be the Most High. The Most High is the hierarch of a particular system. So, okay, in that distant sun, these energies, they pour through the hierarchy upon the mass of men, Cancer, mass consciousness, the mass, and enable the unit in that mass, note this, to isolate himself, which, is a Leonian function. When you begin to isolate yourself from the mass, it's under Leo. And turn his back upon the past, Cancer always rules the past, and find his way onto that section of the path wherein he learns to feel. He becomes more and more sensitive. And it's interesting that one of the keynotes of Leo is sensitivity, and Sirius is also called the brilliant star of sensitivity. So there's a lot going on here, about Sirius in relation to cosmic Camamanus and that kind of thing, but we don't need to take it up. Feeling is important, and there's a higher way of interpreting feeling, and Master Moria does that all the time. It's one thing to think of astral feeling, but the feeling of the heart is a much fuller thing. Okay, now I incorporated here I incorporated a quotation about 3 stages of individuality. And when you're dealing with Leo and when you're dealing with Sirius, the conception of what yourself is always changing, and it is being elevated. So in general, when we step onto the probationary path, we move out of the personal consciousness of the mass consciousness, into probationary discipleship. Now, here is the quotation, and we'll see if that is of interest to us. I think it will be. Between the stages of isolated individuality and isolated unity, which is like kind of a Leonian fifth degree initiate stage, beginning around the third degree, between the stages of isolated individuality, where you exist, but you feel quite unrelated, and isolated unity, lies one to which we give the name isolated identity. Why? Notice that the term for the sun, S-O-L, suggesting soul and consciousness and sensitivity, is in the word isolated. And so often we have to be by ourselves in meditation before we get a real grasp of what our real state of consciousness is. Notice there is a triangle here between these three states of consciousness. So isolated identity comes in. It is with this stage we are concerned, and with its esoteric implications. Isolated unity describes the stage which the master has reached. Isolated individuality, before the disciple is really an initiate, is that of the disciple. Isolated identity with the soul is that of the disciple up to and including the third initiation. So it's almost as if this isolated individuality, an aspect of the path of probation. Sometimes DK says, look, you can be a disciple before you are a first-degree initiate. But when you are a first-degree initiate, you are truly a disciple. But he seems to be including the path of probation here. So, try to remember this. They say, Moria says, you want to remember something, press the bridge of your nose. Isolated individuality, isolated identity, identifying with the soul. See, you pretty much identify with the personality. It may be a spiritualizing personality with isolated individuality, but you may not have taken the first initiation yet. Isolated identity, yes, you're identifying more and more with the soul, and then from the third degree on, you're a true initiate, and you begin to build in the sense of the wholeness of things, and climaxing effectively at the fifth initiation, which is the initiation of soul, S-O-L. Now, I tell you what, I have a feeling we don't want to load too much information, too much. We've done quite a bit, and there's quite a bit to think about. So what I'm going to do is say we'll take this up the next time. Meanwhile, you'll have a chance to think about the role of Cancer, Capricorn, and Saturn representing Sirius in your life as you are undertaking purifications. Now, I don't know if any of us has entirely passed through all aspects of purification. It just seems to be something that is ongoing. But nevertheless, it's very important. And when we get to the Leo Sirius festival, we will find that it deserves a lot of thought. this whole question of purification, and this is the 9th of July, and we haven't gone too far, 1 or 2 pages, but I just don't want to pile on too much information. You can read this section, and triangles are all over the place. Even that whole idea of where do I stand in the triangle of isolated individuality, isolated identity, and isolated unity. That is a big question for all of us, because eventually we have to isolate the whole, and it's going to be okay, so this is going to be Wednesday 16th, and it's going to be an evening session, and I'll get rid of July 10th. Now more will come, and we'll be dealing with the path of discipleship per se, and why it is so, and why we consider, in a way, accepted discipleship as real discipleship, and how it leads up to the 3rd degree, which is the real beginning of the path of initiation, and how all of these great influences in triangular form so often propel us along the path of development, which we all must tread eventually. It comes from within us, but then again, all of the heavens are within us in a certain sense, and it comes from our great stellar surroundings of these beings who have passed way beyond what we have done, and yet there's only one being in cosmos. Okay, friends. Are you still my friends? After all this? All right. Yeah, wow, this is...
Michael. Housekeeping issue.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Relative illusory time has brought
Uh-oh. Michael, I'm losing you. I'm getting... Okay, we got a problem. I don't know if you can hear me, but you're really breaking up, so I couldn't get what you said. I'm sorry. You want to write it out just briefly or try again? It was going like so, So I don't know what to do. Tuya, did you hear what Michael was saying there? Maybe it's just my machine here.
No, it was for me the same.
Okay, so try again, Michael. Try again. I'm very sorry, but it was really that metallic sound. When you hear it, you know you're in trouble. So can you hear me? That's the question right now. Let's go again. That housekeeping issue. Can you? Or maybe you're Yeah. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead. Yep. Okay.
Maybe if Michael could write down it.
Yeah, write in the chat. Write it in the chat succinctly so we can get it. I'm very sorry, but it's breaking up for me. Did anybody here among our attendees hear what Michael said clearly? Because I think we're having a transmission problem. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's just do what we can do. Do what we can do, and maybe Michael can write that in the chat, And with gratitude, yes, hi, Frederick, nice to see you here. And, okay, Japan, yeah, you're in Japan, okay. Can we differentiate, you say, you ask, the energies and isolation process classifying energy within ourselves, centripetal energy, and the energy focusing towards others, maybe centrifugal energy focusing towards others, and the sound, yeah. Now, of course, we're both Michael. I'm Michael, and Michael Stacy is Michael. So I hope, I don't know which one of us has the good sound, but I lost Michael Stacy. Anyway, we'll do what we can, right? Sometimes these things happen. Okay, well, let's look at your question. The energies and isolation process. Okay, look, as we isolate, we detach ourselves from identification with form, per se. This is what the Buddha was having us do. And in a way, it is centripetal, going in towards a center which everyone shares, because it is reality, it is pure being. That's the real identity, and we isolate that identity gradually, climaxing that in our phase of development at the fifth initiation, and really beginning around the third initiation, this interest in being. It's a third initiation thing, and it means you move inward to find the core of being within yourself. Now, of course, then the centripetal aspect of that, you know, earlier centripetal means centrifugal, be careful, means we identify with all that's out there. In other words, whatever we perceive, somehow we get enmeshed in it. But then comes the law of repulse. We reject, we internalize, we find our true center of being. And when we found it, we're in the position again to turn from centripetal to centrifugal, and we begin to share the radiation of understanding unity and oneness with others. Because it's not that the world of form will disappear. It will never disappear, except cyclically. And we're always going to have to find that something which lies beneath all evident forms, and to deal with the forms, and to realize that the forms are really an exteriorization of that something that we have found, which is much more subtle. So there's an inward, there's a big outward. It's the period of extraversion, and it represents an earlier stage. Then the gradual detachment and withdrawal, a more advanced stage until we find within ourselves our true nature, and then again the great sharing. Look at hierarchy. They know everything, well, not everything, okay, but they know a great deal about pure being and about unity and about oneness and about what they really are. But what are they preparing to do? They're preparing to move outward now into the world of previous identification, to share the inner possibilities with those who are still trapped in that world of forms and who are identifying with the forms. So that's how I would, undertake that differentiation. Okay. Yes, okay, sound was okay, good. So we might be able to draw all centripetal and centrifugal energy workflow to explain all evolution of the stage. Yes, look, just the way we have this interesting kind of Kundalini diagram, it unifies, it splits, it crosses, it unifies, it splits, it crosses, unifies, it splits, and on and up and on and up. So we have the same thing going in a different dynamic. It goes in, it goes out. Centripetal, centrifugal, centripetal, centrifugal, always on a higher turn of the spiral. Let me put it like this. The externalization of the hierarchy is a great centrifugal act of the heart center of the planet. And of course, we have that in relation to the heart, arterial Venus. We have the outgoing and the incoming. So yeah, that is an important dynamic. Yes. So it keeps going. It keeps going until, there's this interesting phrase in the teaching, I shall go no more out. I shall go no more out. And what that means is that reincarnation, at our stage at least, is no longer necessary, but still the master does not go out in identification with matter. He goes out in salvation of those who are still identified with matter and form. So, unless we have that great centrifugal outward movement, we wouldn't be having the major dynamic that we are having on our planet right now, the externalization of the hierarchy, the reappearance of the Christ. It is centrifugal by those who have established centripetally what they're doing and know who they are and know what divinity is and can convey it. Okay, maybe that gives, an idea. I think you have the idea, actually, and both are working. The splits and the forward and the back, how we want to diagram that, I don't know. But in and out, it's a duality, it's bipolar, and it operates in our world of Mahamaya. It even operates on the very highest level. I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to call it super universal Mahamaya, and I'm going to call it the Great Breath. So somehow there is a universe, and then there is none. And then again, a universe, and then there is none. And that goes on forever with no beginning and no end. And it's the same idea as centripetal, centrifugal, only it's on the very highest level of possible exteriorization. You make a universe, you become a universe. That's the highest level. Okay, Frederick. Now, Anne Veronica, let's see. Well, higher astral is not sentimental. Look in Rule 10 in the rays and initiations. Wonder if I can get there. And here, let me see what we got here. I'll come right back here, Anne Veronica. peculiar liking, peculiar dislike, like. Oh, there's one. Okay, I guess I can't find it, but basically he's in the eliminations. There are 4 eliminations discussed in the rays and the initiations. And let's see if I can do it this way. I'll try it this way. Sentiment. Try that. We're talking about group fusion. One of the problems confronting the hierarchy in this connection is the elimination of sentiment, that curious emotional reaction and relationship which links all the members of the group together in the bonds of liking or disliking. Where there is too strong a personality relation is established, where there is liking, then too strong a personality relation is established. As far as the good of the group is concerned, the group equilibrium is disturbed. Where there is disliking, the inner faculty of rebuff works constantly, and cleavages then occur. Is it not true, my brothers, that your relation to each other is frequently subjected to the impact of approval or of disapproval? When that attitude exists, the first steps towards group fusion are absent, and this is what is meant by sentiment, and this emotional reaction must disappear as a preliminary stage. So that, so much for sentiment. Let me get this straight. On page whatever, page what? Page 209. And, I have a funny feeling that on the 4th subplane of the astral plane, with its 4th ray nature, a lot of this attraction, repulsion, liking, disliking, is found. But then we start moving up on the astral plane, on page, treatise on page 188, and maybe it doesn't say so much. We move up into the stages of clairvoyance, imagination, and emotional idealism. And maybe once we really are achieving those etheric levels of the astral plane, a higher form of astral functioning is found. And then we're not so much caught in these vicissitudes of liking and disliking. But he considers it important enough to mention in the beginning of Rule 11 as something you got to get rid of, and the personality ties and rebellion against working as a miniature hierarchy and not knowing what occult silence is. Those are all things that we have to get rid of before we're ready for the kind of group process which could one day lead to the 4th initiation. So that's how I would discriminate between those things, between normal sentiment and higher astral possibilities. Now let's see here. We're going back to our Catherine. I should have you. Oh, here's Anne Veronica. Okay. In esoteric, there seems to be a difference, and you also said today something like this. Also, to bring into form, we need the astral plane. Yes, we need that level of vibration, and in the white magical process, without the astral plane, the soul has to cut the thread, and the personality dies. So this is part of what is called the magician is drowning, or he's drained of the waters. So definitely we need that level of vibration we call the astral plane. Also, to bring into form, we need the astral plane. It seems to work like a boost to bring an idea into the physical plane. Yes, we become enthused, energized, full of aspiration, fierily oriented towards the manifestation of a good idea. And those good ideas come at first from the realm of the soul. Real ideas maybe come from somewhere else, the Buddhic plane and beyond, but the soul has its share of appropriated ideas, and it wants to manifest them as part of the divine plan. And the astral plane, like you say, it's a lift, it's a boost, it's an energizing, and it propels via rightly oriented desire the thought form towards manifestation. So I think that's correct. Now let's see, am I...
Michael.
Yes, Tuya. Go ahead.
Yes, I was just wanting to add something what is very interesting, what DK says about a particular group which has been brought now into activity during this process of transition in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that group is a particular group which is via astral plane, connecting mental plane with the etheric plane. And that group is very advanced in that sense that it is, even though we are talking about the physical aspect of that work, or the aiming of that, but this group, what DK says, is the group which has the mental polarization, or it is a long way to go towards that, or something like that.
Yeah.
So we should not be afraid ever, whatever exists, it is meant to be. It has a great role. It's not always only low role. The astral plane, as you have been talking, is about being the intermediate between the physical and the mental, and it is meant to give the water, if we can say so, into the everything what needs to grow, and the higher realms of the astral plane, what you were already hinting, and you were both saying, is about that the soul can function, because there is the rapport between the astral plane and Buddhic plane.
Exactly.
And
I was looking for those groups that you're talking about, in cosmic fire.
It's one particular group which is very much under the seventh ray. But then we have to remember, as Christ is kind of water aspect in the work of hierarchy, and he is in the charge, in the head of at this time, and again that he is the one who initiates, like we could say, only the first and second degrees. But yet that part is so important that if that is not happening, the humanity cannot rise. So we should always remember that when we are looking, and it's very natural about human beings that they are looking about the status, and this is only that and that grade. But this is so important grades, the lowest one also that if that is not happening, so no hierarchical plan cannot go through.
I think, Tuya, that it's only the 6th and 7th subplane astral matter that humanity has to avoid making part of its astral body. The rest is all very good. And here's something about the orders of devas, and I think the ones you're looking for are somehow here, but I don't want to go. Oh wow, it's quite a complicated area, and it extends a number of pages, and the different deva groups are here mentioned. So
What are you pointing
out? Oh, here
out
it is.
now,
Here it is. Here
Michael?
it is. This is the one you were talking about. These groups of devas. Now, wait a second. It's coming up. I hope it's coming up. Right here is where it is. Now, if you can look on your CD-ROM, maybe you can find it. The animal kingdom, the heaven and hell, the astral life of any thought form. Different devas are comprising different groupings, and the ones that go toward from the heart or make a connection between the astral plane and the heart should also be here. Here it is.
That
number 8.
Michael.
Here it is.
Okay.
Okay, a group of devas closely connected with the mysteries of initiation. They form what is esoterically called the path of the heart and are the bridge between the astral and the Buddhic plane. They are in no way connected with the permanent atoms in the causal body, but are very definitely associated with the central tier of petals in the egoic lotus or the love petals. Force interacts between these 3 petals on the one hand, and the devas who form the path of the heart upon the other, those who are the bridge of astral Buddhic matter, whereby initiates of a certain mystic type make their great approach. So right here around page 678, 679 are some of these groups of devas who have the different functions within the human being. And here's the one I think that you were referencing, and somewhere else that says they.
Michael.
Yep.
Yeah, I was referring a human group who has been brought this time.
Yeah, that's right.
To work for hierarchy.
Yeah, and they use this, and they work with these devas, and I know what you mean. There's a special group in externalization of the hierarchy that it talks about a group that is working in this way to create that connection, and they have to be mentally polarized. I can't go looking for that now, but we can find that. And if anybody is interested in the types of devas that you can, important groups doing important things for humanity and the planet, right here around page 680 and before, you'll find what you're looking for. So he lists a bunch of groups in externalization of the hierarchy. And if I go try to find it right now, I'll get lost. So I can't do that. But if you know where they are, you can bring it up and we can look at it. Anyway, our destiny, we human beings, is to work with different kinds of devas doing different things depending upon what kind of service group we're involved with. And there are special people who are involved with this connection that you've been talking about. Okay? Okay. All right, let's take a look. Is there anything? Now, I just want to make sure that I get everybody here. Catherine, I know you were trying to say something. I'm trying to find your question mark. Why can't I find it? Oh, here it is. Okay, that was about the voice. I got it. Frederick, you have made yourself known through your questions and statements. Anybody else? And Anne Veronica, you have asked the question that I address myself to between sentimentality, which is it's kind of a funny chamomaniac state in a way, and it does not involve an especially high level of the astral plane. But there are, as Tuya was saying, really the necessity for the astral plane, and the first, well, let's just say, we as disciples, we should be working on the etheric levels of the astral plane. And I would say from level 4, 3, 2, and 1, and the closer we can get to levels 2 and 1, imagination and idealism, the closer we are coming to making the astral plane really work in an integrated manner on the spiritual path. Usually it's a great obstacle, and we have to rid ourselves of many glamours that have their greatest force of expression on the astral plane, because humanity has made this astral plane out of astral matter by the way it has configured its own desires. Now, the astral matter has to remain, but different kinds of configurations should be appearing as we learn how to deglamorize the combinations of astral matter. So we're not done with the astral plane by any means, and eventually it has to be a true reflector of Buddhic heart, love, energy. And that, of course, is our great goal. And then it will no longer be the astral plane as we have known it. It will be a field of vibratory possibility, giving us motivation, enthusiasm, direction, fire, impulse towards manifestation or towards penetration into higher realms. It's still the same matter, it's still the same force, but it's differently configured. Without those atoms, there's going to be a break, and the magician will not survive. So we have to have the matter, but what have we done with it? That's the question, and we have to change what we've done with it. Okay. Anything else on what we have discussed here, or other points in occultism? Because soon we're going to have, I don't know, do you want to do that? Just a little, I mean, we have our real meditation coming up, but this is just to link us to the greater network of triangles, that's all. So think about that for a minute.
Michael, you can do that.
Yeah, okay, I know. The dogs. Unfortunately, our dogs will get into the act and there'll be more sound than you want to hear. Okay. But we have
Okay, Michael.
Yes, Michael.
My audio is currently working briefly. The housekeeping issue is that illusory time is now July 10 rather than the 9th.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, good old illusory time, huh? Okay, so we were July 10th. Okay, good. And now we finished with this business, and it's July. I got it. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, you're much clearer now, and something had happened there. I don't know what to say. So it'll be the 17th of June and not the 16th. All right.
Of July.
Of July. Oh, my goodness. I'm suffering from my Neptune in the third house, I'm afraid. Excuse me.
Also, it's interesting how this energy from Sirius and part of that triangle is Saturn, and the law of karma originates from Sirius, and Saturn's the lord of karma, or one of the lords of karma.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, you can put it together in a triangle, which we always try to do these days. Saturn, the intermediary law of karma. It's coming from Sirius. So that's you see, because Sirius works through the three synthesizing planets. Sirius, the brilliant star of sensitivity, is working through Neptune. Sirius, the origin of the law of freedom, is working through Uranus. So the three synthesizing planets each have a particular kind of, what you would say, law or tendency associated with them, and the Sirian energy works for them. And also, there's an unknown planet. Now, it's in a different part of the Esoteric Astrology book, and my friend Nicholas, he calls that planet Isis. Now, Isis is another name for Sirius in the Egyptian mythology, at least according to the research Tuya has done. And this Isis is a planet, and when I worked with Charles Jane, he was a very fine astrologer and very mathematical. He said, you know, just the same way that our Earth goes around the sun in one Earth year, this planet Isis that's out there also goes around the sun in 360 years. So you see the relation between the year and the year. It's like a year in which every year is a day. So whether that's a regular orbit, whether it's an elliptical orbit, what the exact number of years is, those things must remain unknown for the moment. But there is that planet out there, much connected with Sirius, and it's said to be unknown. You know, I mean, he's not giving us the name or anything like that, but it's speculated to be the planet Isis, and through Isis comes the flow of energy through Uranus, law of freedom, Neptune, star of sensitivity, Saturn, law of karma, and into then our Earth. So that's how it gains entrance into the solar system. I think it's a very interesting, and I don't even know where to go look for it because it's a diagram. Okay, if it was just words, I might know where to go, but maybe it's in the Leo chapter, perhaps. But interesting, you know, because each one of those synthesizing planets has an important role to play in the transmission of Sirian energy to our Earth, especially to the hierarchy of our Earth. We're told that Sanat Kumara is not exactly on the Sirian line because he's the root of Shambhala, but that the hierarchy itself is more on the Sirian line, and that is bringing in the cosmic Christ aspect of Sirius, the second aspect of divinity. So, look, you know, you can see how intricate all of this interflow of energy is, and that's why the Tibetan says, look, I can't give it all to you, not by any means. I'm just kind of giving you a little bit, piquing your curiosity, making it possible for you to go in and do more. Because he says the science of triangles underlies the whole cosmos. I can't even really hardly begin. But he does begin. And at least we get an idea about how it works relatively locally. Okay. And let's see if there's anything more. I think everybody has had their questions at least addressed, you know, whether Why? Okay, and Veronica has one more thing here. Why are these devas the path of the heart and not connected with the permanent atoms? Permanent atoms are in relation to form, and these are very formless devas. They have to do with the inner or the 246 or the life side. The permanent atoms are the area of generating forms on each one of the levels on which they are found. So in the distinction that he sometimes makes between form and matter form and life, maybe life consciousness, is the answer to this question, because we're dealing with qualitative matters now and not formal matters such as the permanent atoms deal with. Now, there's some intricacy that goes on in connection with all that, but I think that's the basic idea behind it. These particular days.
Michael,
Yes, dear, did you have? Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
sorry, please finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I mean, it's just there are devas connected with formlessness and devas connected with the construction of form, and the ones we're talking about here are more on the formless life consciousness side. Go ahead, dear. Go on.
Yes, exactly. I was just wanting to put one idea about, because when we talk about devas, we are talking always about building, and whatever is manifested in formless side or in form side, anyway, it is about building something. And these devas are forming this least resistance path, what we can think about from the Buddhic plane. That's why related via the rays with the astral plane. So these devas patterns this connection.
Yeah. It's always building, like you say, and man, strangely, is tearing down and destroying. Those are the two. If I had to, in Cosmic Fire, I'd have to find the place where it is. But he says the Deva kingdom is connected with rays 2 and 3, and humanity with rays 1 and 2. So they meet on the level of ray 2, where there can be some useful construction. But in general, the devas are connected with form or with fields of energy, which may not have a sharp outline, but still they have a certain quality to them, and they can be used in the building process. Man is always, whatever man it is, dragon of wisdom man, cosmic lion man, all the way up, grand heavenly man, always feels that anxiety about having a trapped spirit. And so eventually is going to break out and crash through and liberate the devas that have been attracted and which are holding the form. So, parallel things are going on here. And, look, there's 140 billion self-conscious devas in our solar system, and only 60 billion man, whatever, manas, human monads versus deva monads. That means we're in a Devic solar system. We're in an astral Buddhic solar system. And so the group that Tuya was talking about, and then the devas that I was talking about on the path of the heart, are really important in this particular solar system. Now, in the next solar system, it'll be different, and it'll be connected with the first ray. and there'll be even more forms of life than there are present. You know how it went? It went 100 billion, 200 billion for our system, and the next system will be 300 billion lives, but they're not going to be so polarized into man and deva. We don't know exactly what kind of life they will be, but they will make the necessary six. And in the center of the six is always that round something that embraces all the six and unifies them. Just take, like I say, do the experiment, take out 7 pennies, make a hexagon, and put 1 penny in the middle, and that's the way it fits. And that's what's going on with the first solar system, the second, and the third to come, in which, no doubt, quite a number of us will be involved as solar angels of a higher kind, as everything is always moving upward, and individualization will not take place in relation to the mental plane, but he tells us in relation to the monadic plane, however that might transpire. Okay. All right, let's have just a little. Now what we'll do, if are there any other questions, any other statements, any statements from our staff members or anybody before we get into our short meditation, and we'll have the real meditation on triangles tonight. Tui and I are trying to fix our iPod. We have some instructions, and we'll try to bring out whatever fifth ray we do have. Otherwise, you'll hear the Om in the background until we manage to get all of this working. But anyway, we will have our meditation tonight at 5 o'clock p.m. GMT. And it'll be a broadcast, not a webinar like this. Okay. See if I'm missing anything. Okay. All right, then let's go on. And just briefly, okay, not a lengthy meditation, not that. I'll just use one diagram, this one, 1 or 2 diagrams. We'll just come together in the silence. And we'll try to realize how intricate, how many lines of connection there really are in the triangles network and all the different levels of the triangles network. Usually you see a nice geometrical drawing that's quite balanced, like this one and so forth. But really, it's not like that. And of course, people are always moving, and the shape of the triangles are changing, is changing. And at first, humanity has to be drawn together through triangles, and eventually the kingdoms of nature on our planet, and eventually the different globes and even chains, and you've seen the diagrams. But be aware that our planetary gods in this solar system are also united through triangles. Think about that for a minute. They may seem to be distinct bodies in space with their own energy and their own psychology, and that's true, but there's always these lines of connection because we're into a solar systemic group process. So everything is changing shape all the time. And the triangles are changing shape as the different planets are revolving around the sun. But of course, we know it doesn't stop there, and there are local systems in which our whole solar system is just one chakra area, that of the heart. And so triangles of stars are found, and they're moving too. They have their own proper motion. It's not just that we're moving past them that makes them seem like they are moving. They are going somewhere. So the triangles will always be changing shape, and then triangles of constellations of which we could say the same. Great force centers ensouled by great lives. So we begin humbly, and we know that gradually the larger dimensions will be known to us. We begin by simply relating as human beings in a spiritual way. And we continue to raise the possibilities of triangular interconnections. And we resolve then to do everything we can to transform the squares, which are probably the majority of relations, in our non-sacred selves, to resolve the squares into triangles, which will indicate our growing sacredness. Well, thank you, everybody, for enduring and tonight our broadcast. and we will, handle too. You will be leading, and we'll be doing the more practical side that involves reconditioning the etheric body of humanity. So maybe we'll see some of you there. Some of you will be asleep, okay? And we look forward to meditating with you. These programs, they will go up on YouTube, and they will go up on Makara. If you have friends that you want to recommend this to or to re-listen to anything, they will be available as videos. So let's keep meditating our way into greater clarity, not only for our own sake, but for the sake of beglamored humanity. We can really help with the science of triangles, and we can actually begin to know in a larger sense what is going on. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.